Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lucifer, the latest episode of Supergirl, as well as the latest episode of The Gifted. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Lucifer, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Supergirl, and or skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of The Gifted. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Lucifer. Another great episode, and this particular episode is kind of, I like the overall theme of like, hey, like kind of accept being more of who you are, because basically the entire episode's about people not being who they are, because it's like Lucifer kind of like, he hears from Minadal that he's kind of become boring because he spent time with Chloe and Trixie playing Monopoly. That's not the usual Lucifer who just gets caught up in a lot of debauchery, I guess is one way of putting it, you know, drinks and ladies and sex and just stuff like that. And it's like he's kind of fallen out of that too a little bit, because I mean Lucifer's thing is he kind of drowns in that a little bit, just because it's like, because I think he himself kind of tries to, like I said, it seems like this season more so than anything, it's like him struggling with his identity. I feel like it's never been that much. It's probably played parts before, but not to this extent. But now it's just like, because he's seeing all these different people, it's like, oh, kind of putting people in certain categories. It's like, oh, you're a shoe, or you're a top hat. Oh, you're a very presentable, posh type of person. And it's like, oh, you're a top hat. You're kind of a dull, boring person. You're a shoe. And it kind of fits into this whole episode when it deals with this whole dating site called Top Meet. It's basically like celebrities and high profile people get on this to date. It's just the whole situation. And basically this lady named Kim ends up getting killed. And we end up later on finding out that Kim was actually the brains of the operation. She's the one that created it in the first place. Mac was more so the face. Like, it's because the way she looks and being who she is, she kind of didn't have a lot of confidence in herself. And it's like, for a dating app about like the top of the top dating, like, oh, gorgeous and amazing people dating, she felt like she really wouldn't have done the job right. So, you know, she wouldn't have gotten investors invested. So Mac was supposed to be the one who kind of took over everything. So we also had this episode kind of along those same lines of I love the fact that we got Chloe becoming more like Lucifer. As Ella put it, Chloe does Lucifer. And she's like, you really don't, Chloe's like, don't put it like that. And basically she becomes Lucinda, kind of like the female version of Lucifer, because she's trying to be more like him and everything. And I love Lucifer pretending to be like the new her and everything. She's trying to be a guy, and he's just like flipping his hair back and forth. And she's like, I know, do that. He's like, I know. He's trying to like take everything that he does that works for him and try to make Chloe apply it. And it doesn't work out, especially when Chloe's trying to like laugh at everything he says. It's like, don't sound like a cracked out witch. It was something like that. It was so good. Basically, ultimately, like I said, it kind of ties in that Chloe ends up learning. A lot of times it's scary sometimes to be yourself, but ultimately it works out in the end. You probably, you know, she ended up connecting with one person, Benji. I mean, that's why him and Kim liked each other. Because initially he went out with Esther, but Esther's just kind of boring. She's superficial and everything. But he dug Kim because he didn't have to like keep up his persona. It's like, oh, you're like this famous person or whatever. It's like you don't have to keep up that persona. You don't always have to be quote unquote on, and he could just be himself, you know. And that's why him and Kim hit it off. But you have someone like Esther, who's a total fraud, which took Lucifer for like, because it's like, wait, what? Like, oh, your whole like going all these different places, your world travels. It's like, no, it's just a set. You know, like nothing about you is really real. You actually do work out to keep the body that you have, you know. Same thing for Mac. He's not the great whiz that came up with this popular app. He was just the face of it, you know. And he killed Kim because she was going to shut it down. But not in the sense of making it more acceptable for everyone, you know. You don't have to be, in this case, a top hat to be on it. You can be a shoe too, just, or anywhere in between, you know. It's just like a place for everyone to kind of connect. So because she met up with Benji, because things click like that, it made things kind of work out nicely. So that was just kind of an interesting thing, because I think at the end of it all, like Lucifer kind of learned to more, you know, especially because he'd always, I think come to see the shoe in a different light, because at the end of the episode he took the shoe home with him. It's more of a situation of like, that there are boring people and exciting people in his life, in his particular life. It's like, well, it's not my fault. It's not everyone's fault that I'm just so interesting all the time. The fact is, you know, even in the most boring lives, I can, you know, most boring things can kind of turn exciting when the time comes and stuff like that. So I actually have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. I'm just kind of all over the place. I apologize. Probably one of my favorite storylines in this episode is the Charlotte and Ella situation. I love that Ella kept going head over, like trying her best to avoid her. I thought it was going to be also like Dave Dan avoiding Charlotte as well. Turns out not to be the case. He avoids her like one time because this is their first subsequent time after like her kind of coming back into the picture and everything. But she still doesn't let anyone know that the fact of the matter is she wasn't herself at that time, that she actually doesn't remember any of that time. So that I was thinking she was going to tell Ella about that, but it turns out it was something else. But I'll kind of get into that. But to the point, Ella was trying to close the door, and it's like, oh man, because she wants to spend so much time with Ella, because amongst everyone on the show, Ella's kind of like the most, like, she's like the one you point to. It's like, oh, who's the best person on the show? Like, just on a scale of like good. And it's like, yeah, you point to Ella. She's like Mrs. Bright. She's Miss Brightside. She's got like a sunny disposition, personality. It's like, she's like rainbows in human form, essentially, you know? So obviously Charlotte wants to learn from her, and she lies about the whole like shadowing program and everything. And just like, it's like, oh, that guy's coming. Oh yeah, let me close the elevator. What? Like, nice try, buddy. To what am I, Mother Teresa? And it's just, it's so interesting because at first I was wondering why Ella's trying so hard to avoid her. I guess it's just because she feels awkward, especially because like at the beginning she's like, Demo, what do you think about me? And she's pointing a knife. It's like, well, it's looking a little scary at this point. It's like, oh, come on. If I were going to stab you, I wouldn't do it here with all these cops around. I'm joking. She's like, oh yeah, joke's funny, but dark. I was like, that is a dark joke that I kind of laughed a little bit at. But I love that aspect because it's like, because it's also setting up them being around each other more. Because, you know, Ella kind of, it's so interesting considering who Lucifer is, that she never sees that about Lucifer. She only sees it when it comes to Charlotte. Because I mean, everyone's got a little darkness in him, and Dan, we kind of saw his little darkness in season 1, but even then that was more so for his family. So there's a little bit of light behind that. But the whole interesting situation is like Charlotte doing some good, like, because she ends up coming through with some evidence in the end that kind of helps move the case along. And obviously, because she's a lawyer and everything, she's like, well, you're not going to get any evidence. You're not going to be able to get a search warrant based on this. And all this evidence is circumstantial. So it's good to have her around. And it's like, oh, Isaiah, she's like, first time killers, they always take the weapon with them. It's like all the times that I've allegedly known about people who've done that. And Chloe and Ella look at her and she's like, I said allegedly. It's like, oh, it's so crazy. Because I love that we're getting to know Charlotte outside of being, you know, Lucifer's mom inside of her. Like, we're getting to know her personality. And it's like, it's not like, it's so interesting because like, we didn't really know the bad Charlotte that she was before, that she didn't really care about anything but money and just crossing whatever line she needed to. But now we're seeing a different side of her because she ultimately knows where she's going to end up and she's trying to make things right. I mean, because ultimately, it's what Lucifer said. Like, we learned that last episode with Reese. Well, I'm definitely going to get into that more this episode. But the fact of the matter is, like, you going to hell is based on your own guilt. So I think when it's all said and done, when Charlotte can have a clear conscience and she feels like she's done enough, then I think that ultimately will prevent her from like going to hell in that whole situation. But I love that she admitted later on too, she's like, actually, I stole that file. And it's like, well, as long as you did it for the right reasons, you're slowly getting there. So it's a situation of like, you know, practice that a little bit more and everything, and then you'll get there. Once again, still don't know why Ella's trying to avoid her though. I guess it's just like because of who she is, and Ella just doesn't, or maybe it has to deal with Ella herself, because, you know, we learned a little bit about her, like the episode, was that last week's episode or was that the episode before last? No, it was last week's episode. In the sense of, because that really quickly makes me think of the fact is, when she was being Lucinda, she had to take the bullet off, which is kind of sad. Lucifer's like, oh, you're taking it. Like, you saw it kind of hurt him a little bit. He's like, oh, no, I get it. It's part of the character and everything. It's like, oh, is there anything between you two? It's like, no. It's like, there is, but you're fighting it so hard. But I don't know. I mean, ultimately, getting back to what I was saying, maybe it's like that little bit of something inside of, Ella, maybe she feels like there's something inside of her. She's like, I don't feel like I'm the right person to be someone's moral compass. Or maybe she feels like that's too much responsibility to be someone's moral compass, to be their guide in what's good and not. We are seeing that Charlotte is becoming the DA now because of Ella's words. She's kind of set in her mind, which means because she's going to be on the DA side of things now, she's going to be putting bad people away instead of defending them. This definitely means that they're going to be crossing paths a lot more, which I appreciate. Because I love this too, because it's not just about her and Lucifer's relationship. This whole Charlotte thing, it seems like it's probably the main people it's going to affect. Obviously, cases going forward. But I think it's also going to be like Dan and Ella the most, because those seem like the people she's going to hang around the most, in particular Ella. And this might lead us down a path of learning more about Ella, because we're slowly creeping that direction of like learning more about her. Like I said, the whole voices in her head thing we kind of learned about before. So That was pretty neat. I also love that Lucifer is like, the fact of the matter is like, Lucifer's like, okay, I'll be the one. It's like, well, he's a guy. And he's like, and? Well, the fact is he's straight. He's like, what? Like, I've flipped so many guys, they call me the skillet. I was like, oh, that's kind of a neat name. I thought that was kind of neat. But, there was another interesting aspect to this episode, and it kind of ties into what I was bringing up earlier about Reese. I thought this was going to be a one-off episode. Did not know it really would literally tie into the next episode. I guess, because the fact is, like, Linda's setting up Reese's, like, funeral. So the timeline ended up being, like, it eventually, like, I thought it was kind of like some made up time here in the present, like, season that the series, it ended. Like, I figured it was like, maybe that's season 2, but it's like, no, this is in fact season 3. That took place literally within this timeline, like after it skipped forward like that year or so. I'm like, that's so cool. So it's not just like some one-off that meant nothing. Like, obviously it was character development, but we also see what it kind of does for Linda this episode, because like she's now dealing with the whole funeral arrangements. And the reason why she cares so much, even though her and Reese had problems, is because she doesn't feel bad. It's not messing with her. That's what makes her feel bad. Because now, because Amenadiel's helping her in this episode, and it's kind of interesting when you get her perspective on things, because for her, it's like the mysticism of the world is kind of ruined for her, because she knows how everything plays out. She's caught up in this whole celestial thing, like what happened to her with Lucifer and Amenadiel's mom, like what she did to her, almost killing her, which I'll get to that in a second. But it's like, she knows where she's going. Like, any questions she's had before, it's like they've been answered, because she's like, what about reincarnation? I might want to come back as a chameleon, because chameleons are cool, but I can't. Like, that's kind of ruined for me, because like now I know you guys and everything, and she's kind of pissed about it. Now, really quickly, what I was thinking was, it didn't cross my mind. I should have thought about it. Linda, I don't know if that technically counted. Charlotte actually died. So obviously she got a glimpse of what happened, but like, she was on Linda was on death's door, and she was like, oh, I know where I'm going. And I don't know whether that's like a situation of like, oh, she went to heaven or she went to hell, like what that was supposed to mean. It might be a situation of, like, the way she wasn't really bothered by it. So I kind of get the feeling she knows where she's going, and meaning she kind of got a glimpse of heaven, maybe, is what that was kind of alluding to. But it might also be the fact of the matter is, it's like, well, now she knows what the afterlife is like. Before, because like everyone, you have no idea, because so many different religions have their own beliefs on what the afterlife is like. So, but now she knows that she's met angels, she's met a demon, she's met Lucifer. It's a situation of like, well, the fact of the matter is, I know there's a heaven and there's a hell now, so it kind of ruins everything. So she was a little pissed off about it, but it's just because it was her way of processing everything. And I love what Amenadiel did. He kind of put things in perspective. It's like, as an angel, he thought he was the shit. He thought he knew everything, that there was no, like, as I looked upon this world of people who are just idiots, they don't know anything, their world is so small. But now laying back here on earth, laying in the sand, looking up at the sky, realizing how little he does know, that there's so much out there that's even beyond him. And it's like, he puts in perspective of Linda. It's like, well, yeah, some questions have been answered for you, but now you actually have more questions too, because of what you know. And she's like, well, yeah, their questions have shifted and they're different. And it also means I might also have possibly more. So it's like, don't pretend like, you might know some things, but it's not like you know everything. So that mysticism, those questions are still there. They're still the great mystery of things, which I do appreciate Linda being like, well, I still, would like to be a chameleon, and still kind of pissed about that whole situation. So I thought that was pretty neat, that bonding between Linda and Amenadiel. It seems like this might be a season of them building their relationship up too, because prior to this, they kind of had their falling out, especially when Linda, obviously back in season 1 found out about Amenadiel using her to get closer to Lucifer and stuff like that, manipulating her and all of this. But like, slowly over the course of like last season and this season, and definitely this season, their relationship is getting closer, because, they're trying to find their ways past everything. I don't think Linda and Charlotte have crossed paths this season, which is going to be interesting. The first time, oh my God. And it's like, oh, Charlotte. And this is going to be super weird and awkward, I think. So I think that's going to be pretty neat. But overall, like, a great episode. Like I said, it's just... It's always interesting when you see like what Lucifer walks away kind of learning from every episode, and like what he learned from this episode. Also the Charlotte and Ella. I definitely want to see more of that relationship going forward. I did like Linda, taking opportunity, because her and Lucifer at the end are talking about Oscar Wilde, because he knew Oscar. It's like, oh, that quote. Yeah, I wouldn't have said anything to Oscar if I knew it was going to constantly get thrown in my face. Like, oh, he gets quoted as the one who said it, but I'm the one that said it to him in the first place. So that was so cool. And then she's like, oh, well, tell me everything about Oscar. So, I forgot because there was like that last episode. I meant to bring it up. That whole like Hamlet, not Hamlet. Shakespeare had given a copy of Hamlet to Lucifer, and then like Linda was just like just you don't really know what Lucifer has and like who he's bumped shoulder and rubbed shoulders with in the past. You know. Being a celestial being, you've been around for a very long time. So do note that there is no episode next week, but there will be one the week after next. So no episode next week, but the week after that. Very interested to see what goes on in the next episode. Call it a glimpse of the preview. It seems like we're getting back to the Cinnamon case. Obviously, I won't go too far into what happens in the preview, but I'm very excited because I'm very interested in learning about this overarching story and like where that all like what that ends up all being about and what it ultimately how that all will ultimately conclude. So I'm very interested to see what will go down in that next episode. So. And now moving on to this week's episode of Supergirl. Another great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, but let's break everything down bit by bit. We ended up learning that basically that ship that's inside of, like, and obviously they got revealed from the missiles. I was thinking like, okay, so that's connected. Immediately in my brain, I was thinking like, oh, is that the ship that came down from Krypton when Kara left? But then it's like, no, because that ship's been down there 12,000 years. I did love that little moment of like when they're about to investigate the ship. Kara's about to do the spinning thing. She's like, I learned this from Clark. And it's like, oh, no. What we'll do is I'll phase us down, which has got to be weird. I think, are Speedsters and John the only one that can phase through stuff in like this whole Arrowverse situation? Like I said, I'd love to see a competition between their phasing abilities. Nevertheless, it's just something interesting in the back of my head. But I don't think, does Superman do that a lot anymore? That whole like spinning like really fast to kind of dig down like that. I think that's like an old school like Superman tactic, isn't it? I don't know whether that's the movies, animated, maybe even further back in the comic books. Once again, not that familiar with the comic books, but that seems like old school Superman. Doesn't seem like a more recent Superman thing to do, but maybe it is. I don't know. But they end up finding, lo and behold, the person that woke up in the ship, freaking Mondale. I was like, what? I wasn't expecting it. I was like, that's so cool. But obviously, Mon-El comes back. Obviously, Kara's like ecstatic. It's like, oh my God, you're back. Everyone's excited because like, oh, Mon-El's back. And it's so good because it's like, oh, like Kara can be with him again. But it's like, something's different. Mon-El's not like, I'll go ahead and get to it, obviously. But it's like him and having a fiance, not too surprised. The way he was acting when Kara was kind of kissing on him, I was like, some time has passed, especially when he made a remark 7 months. It's like, it definitely, I feel like something went on. It was, I don't, because I'd actually forgotten that he went into the whole wormhole situation. So I was curious about what that was supposed to be. But I'll get to that soon enough. But it's like the fact of it, I was like, he got married or got with a different girl. Like I just get that feeling, just the way he was reacting, because he felt bad because Kara was giving him so much attention and caring for him. And immediately I knew he wasn't 100% bad, because the fact is he didn't kill those guards. He could have. He just knocked them out. I was actually just surprised when Kara just came up out of nowhere and just punched him like that. I was like, whoa, I didn't expect her to. I thought he was going to get away with whatever he's doing, but he was able to convince Wynn to help him out, just not Kara, just because he felt so bad about opening up the car. It's something he ends up bringing up later on. He's like, I should have known that, secrets hurt worse than telling the truth. He's like, because out of anyone, he should know, because it took him forever to admit to Kara that he was a Daxamite prince. And it's like, that whole situation kind of took the turns that it did. So it's like, so he should have known better, but it's just like, he was back on Earth and it felt weird. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it the next episode, but understanding like how they got to where they were, especially because that ship was there for 12,000 years. So we ended up finding out that Mon-El was in the future, which it's so interesting. In particular, the 31st century, which like they've never gotten back to it. But basically in season 1, you go to the, Kara goes to Clark's Fortress of Solitude, and one of the things he has there is a Legion ring. That's always something that stuck out in the back of my mind. I always meant to talk about it like all that time back during season 1, but I completely forgot about it at the time. So it's just kind of interesting that this kind of ties back in like that, because I'm not that familiar with the whole like 31st century superheroes. I think, is that kind of around the Booster Gold situation? I know he's from the future, but I'm not exactly sure where he's from. Even though he's not really a superhero, he's kind of a failed athlete in the future, but he came back using his future knowledge to try and be a superhero. Try to, be kind of douchey about it, take advantage of it. So, but nevertheless, that might be kind of this might be a setup to introduce Booster Gold. Nevertheless, in this particular situation, I don't know about them that much. Like, any superheroes in this whole situation from the 31st century. My only experience is like from Smallville, because it plays a part in the story. It's actually kind of interesting because Kara in Smallville, actually, that's how her story ends, with her going to the future, if I remember correctly. Because that was where her destiny lied. You did like Mon-El's wife, Emra, ends up going, "Oh my God, you're Supergirl," because it's like, well, you know, in the future she's probably a legend. It's like, oh my God, like you're one of like the top tier heroes. It's like, oh my God, like how do we not know about you? It's like you're so cool and awesome. Which obviously it's a little awkward because it's like, well, that's Mono's ex-girlfriend too, and I was like, that sucks. Because especially when Jimmy was saying like, oh yeah, Mono would never do anything to hurt you. I was like, this is gonna be one of those situations where he inadvertently does something to hurt you, isn't it? And it's like, that sucks. Because for her, and she even says herself, it's just so heartbreaking. She's like, I can't sleep at night because every time I close my eyes, I think about you being lost in deep space and everything. But for Mono, it's been 7 years, whereas for Kara, it's only been 7 months, which doesn't make that sting any less. But for him, he was like, I had to move on because I didn't never know I was going to get back to you. But Kara's been spending all that time painting over it. But this whole situation just makes you think like, oh man, he didn't really love her. He moved on so quickly. How dare you do that to Kara? It's like, I mean, because at the end of the day, you can't tell anyone how long it's going to take them to get over heartbreak. Like I never die. I never want to admit actually how long it took me to get over a previous girlfriend. It took me a very, 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 very long time. A lot longer than I'd like to admit. So I understand that, but it's just, now it puts Kara in that awkward situation because it's like, for her, it's only been 7 months. For Mono, it's been 7 years. And now she sees him with a new life, you know, that he's building with someone else. And it's just like, I missed you. But now he can be on Earth because there was a cure that was made like 400 years from now, present day, that ended up making it so like, oh yeah, they can cure the whole lead situation. I was wondering how they were going to deal with that whole situation. But that was just so, it's sad. Like, I'm very curious to find out who else is on that ship too, whether it's going to be someone we're familiar with or not. Once again, this is coming from someone who doesn't know that much about DC Comics, just comic books in general. So, I don't know. I'm very curious to see what they do with this whole turn of events. Like, why are they here back on Earth in this particular time period? I mean, they were probably most likely always on Earth, but probably at, you know, definitely in the 31st century. So, which is so interesting that this show is tackling time travel. Like, because we've already got time travel happening on The Flash. Obviously, in the past, you know, it hasn't really come up too much this season so far. But also, you got Legends of Tomorrow. So it's so interesting with the whole aspect of time travel. It's so cool that that's just like playing such a heavy role. But I mean, it's not like a big role, but maybe it is because of whatever they were trying to do. For them to end up in the past and end up 12,000 years in the past like that, what were you doing? What were you up to? I guess they go all superhero and everything. It's like, oh, we go to different time periods, which would probably bring up the question, like, if you can go to different time periods, why didn't Mon-El come back? Is it a situation where it's like the whole time continuum has to be protected? Because if he goes back to being with Kara, it kind of messes with time. It might mess with, he probably got to the future and knows Kara's history. And he knows that if he goes back, that he's not part of her destiny. His destiny is there in the 31st century with this group. And if he's back with Kara, it's going to ruin her future, that he knows what her future holds for. She's got greatness ahead of her, and he has no part, no story to play in that. That might be a contributing factor in why he moved on. Maybe. I don't know. That's immediately what my brain is about the whole situation, because that tends to be kind of like, I feel like in this particular situation, why that type of thing happens, but I could be completely wrong. We would just have to wait until next time. Well, obviously, next time is going to be a little wonky, but I'll get into that later on. I'm so curious to see where that all, like, what direction that all heads. Obviously, another big side of the episode is the whole Sam situation, because Sam's discovering more and more, okay, like something's up with me. What's up with me? And it turns out that we kind of dive a little into Sam's past, because she goes and meets her foster mother, Patricia, who kicked her out the moment she got pregnant with Ruby. And it's like, well, what are you doing? And it's like, that's so sad. Like, she's like, even like people who get married, who are married and have a child, still have their parents' support. It's like, I didn't have your support at all. Like, when she had Ruby, she kind of had to struggle on her own. And now you kind of understand why she worked so hard too. Because it's like, for her, it's like, it could all go away in an instant. And so everything she does, working so hard, is to strive and protect and help with, Ruby, because it's like she has no other foundation, so she has no one else she can really lean on with this whole situation. There's no like father figure in the picture. There's no parents in the picture. So far, we only really know about Patricia. I don't know if there was like a father figure in her situation, but Sam does find out that she is in fact an alien. It's so interesting because it's like it's so weird seeing that perspective from a different character because we're always seeing it from Clark's perspective, and we never got to see it from Kara's perspective because Kara always knew she was an alien. It was no big surprise for her, but now we got that moment for Sam because she explained it to Patricia like what was happening to her, and it's like, oh, I'm an alien, and now she's kind of going on this journey to come figure out who she is. And what the moment it happened, like her pulling out that crystal and then going to that spot, being led to it, and then rocks formed. I'm like, is she getting her own Fortress of Solitude? But it's made out of rock. I was like, that's so interesting. I mean, it's actually called Fortress of Sanctuary, but still, I was like, that's so neat. But then it gets revealed. She's like, oh my god, I'm like Supergirl. I'm gonna be a superhero. I'm gonna be a hero. It's like, well, somewhat not really. Hero isn't a word I'd basically use. World killer. I was like, ooh. Basically, her name is Rain. Because when I hear world killer, I immediately think Doomsday. So whoever or whatever she is, she seems like she's similar to Doomsday. Like, obviously, I haven't dived too deeply into it. I was going to read up a little bit, but I'll kind of wait till she kind of shows herself a little bit more going forward before I really read anything into her at all. But with the whole red eyes and everything, immediately I think Doomsday, especially with the fortress being made out of rock. I don't know. I mean, because the question was, and it also answered the question too. I was like, I kind of brought it up last time. It's like, okay, so her powers keep coming and going. Why is that? Well, when she turned 18, kind of adulthood, her power was supposed to manifest themselves, but because there was like a malfunction in like her structure and everything, and Ruby happened. Ruby is an accident. It's an error in like her construction, because the way that program was talking about it, it's like, oh, she was made through like a technological thing, which very similar to Doomsday. Obviously, like I brought up before, Doomsday was kind of created from this like constantly adapting thing of trying, like, I forgot what exactly Doomsday's purpose is. It seems like hers as Rain seems to be, her purpose is to bring destruction, to bring the world of man down. So it's like, is that why she was sent to Earth? But why? Is it because they knew that's where Kal-El and Kara were being sent? Is that what that whole situation like revolves around? I'm not sure. Like, but it's like, is it not just this world? Is it supposed to? I mean, world killer makes you think, well, this might not just be Earth. This might be about every planet. Which, once again, so like I said, I'm going to dive a little deeper into it going forward. But I'd rather wait until like the character kind of really presents, like Sam presents herself more, because the whole thing is about losing who she is. Like, the fact is, Sam, as we know, is going to disappear and Rain is going to take over. That means giving up on Ruby as well as everything else. Because I was also bringing that up too. Like, why is it that Ruby's situation happened? Does that mean Ruby shares some of that power too, or not? Once again, also, who's the father in this whole situation? Or is it just kind of an alien biology, like, experiment thing? Because you're not really about, like, it doesn't seem like she's biological. It seems like she's a biological experiment is what, like, she's not like a living human. She is a created living thing. Like, I'm just curious to see like where that all fits into the story going forward between her and Kara. I was like, I'm very interested to see where that goes. Like, I'm wondering, are we going to get a situation of her balancing that? Like, I made a comparison since I brought up Doomsday. It's kind of a similar thing like that with like Smallville, where like Doomsday had his human side who was completely unaware of the Doomsday side. Granted, the whole situation still ended with Doomsday, kind of the human side of Doomsday still being kind of a douchebag. Obviously, if you've never seen Smallville, I highly recommend you check that out. The whole Doomsday arc was season 8. If I remember correctly. I don't know, I'm just so curious to find out like what the whole situation behind that is. Like, for what purpose besides just like, was it purely just to destroy worlds she was created? And like I was saying, are we going to see that duality of it, like her struggling to get in dominance again? Does that mean she's going to come to anyone about it? Or was this the last episode we got to see Sam? Is it beyond this that she's 100% Rain? We'll just have to wait and see. Another interesting storyline about this episode too was about John and his dad, because this episode kind of focuses on the fact is that we never really thought about. The fact is, John's kind of a workaholic, because outside of work he has nothing, because obviously he's introducing his dad to the outside world, because most of the time his dad's been here in like the 3 or so weeks that he's been here, he's been locked up in a DEO, and Wynn's kind of like, well, the fact of the matter is, it's kind of like going from one prison to another. He's kind of locked up here all the time, almost like a prison, and John's trying to show him the world and everything, but his dad comments on the fact is, you're so focused on control and work because you keep looking at your watch. You're here with me, but your mind is elsewhere. It's like, and outside of work, everything is connected to work. It's kind of the same thing Kara is kind of going through right now, where it's like everything she's done so far, she wants to focus on being Supergirl rather than Kara, because it's a lot easier to be Supergirl than it is Kara this particular season. So John had very little when he came to this planet. So for him, like, even his apartment kind of reflects it because it's empty. He doesn't really sleep there because all he has is the DEO. He works to keep himself productive because it's like if he's not doing that, he's just basically kind of wallowing in his loneliness and all that he's lost. So that's why he pushed so much effort into his work. But now that his dad is here, now he's going to try and make that a little bit more of a home, you know, because I think on some level, maybe he's always been kind of scared to treat Earth more like a home, to make an actual home on Earth, because like always afraid of what will happen to his previous home. I'm sure something that him and Kara could kind of especially last episode, because we learned that from Kara, like the only place she ever felt like at home was with Alex, because just Earth is always and still kind of feels a little off because Krypton will always be her home, just like for them Mars will always be their home, you know. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. So this also means, you know, John gets to spend more time with his dad, kind of make up for all those lost centuries, you know, being apart. Like I said, overall, a great episode, a lot of interesting developments, and I'm so curious to see where everything goes. Like, obviously, I'm hoping when it's all said and done that there's going to be some more Kara and Mon-El. Like, I don't know, I want them to be together, especially just after everything Kara's been through. Obviously, I know some people have the opinion of like, yeah, I kind of want Kara to stay single. Let Kara stay single. I mean, because it's something that Mon-El brings up too. It's not like Kara needs a man in her life. It's like, yo, he's like, I try to protect you, but it's like, you've never needed me to protect you, except for those ribs. And it's like, well, it was a limited time only thing. That was kind of cute, but it's just like they're so cute together. You know, it's like when you get your couple, when you have your Felicity and Oliver, you're like, be together, I need you to be together, you know. Or you have your Barry and Iris, it's like, come on, please be together. But it's like, no. And it's just like, it's not going to be easy, you being back, because no matter what, you know, it's like, it's not like you forgot about Kara because you still have the necklace on. And it's because he's like, I would never forget you, no matter where I am, because of all you taught me, the man that she helped make him into, you know. So she basically shaped him into the person that he is. Which I'm also curious is I'm about to say is the whole Daxam situation ever going to come back, but it's like, no. Well, I mean, there's always a possibility considering there's the whole like lead like cure and everything. So it's like, but still, even then, like, I mean, who's to say what Daxam is like in the future? Like, maybe they chilled out and they're not as conquering as worlds. I mean, to be fair, they don't have their king and queen anymore, and their prince is kind of off doing his own thing. So it still makes you wonder like where they fall in the grand scheme of everything. But still. Obviously, next week's episode is going to be the whole crossover event, both on Monday and Tuesday, because it's like a 2-night event. So how I'm going to do that with like the whole podcast situation, I don't know. I might do it like how I did the whole Heroes, versus Alien situation of like recording it day by day, but only releasing it all together at once. I mean, we'll wait and see. Like, ultimately, I don't think it really matters, but I don't know. I'm super excited to see what goes down. I do note I will be mentioning that the rest of the week too, with obviously Flash and Legends as well as Arrow, since that's all going to be involved anyway. So I'm super excited to see what goes down. Obviously, within the next Supergirl episode, within like the TV show, obviously the next episode is like the crossover. But beyond that, I like to see what's there too. But also, I'm super excited for this crossover. I'm so excited. And now moving on to this week's episode of The Gifted. Another great episode. A lot of very interesting reveals went down this episode. So we'll kind of break everything down bit by bit. Obviously, we see a little bit more of the whole situation with the mutants that are kind of being controlled in this episode, because we end up learning that, we end up seeing it firsthand, because like, the only reason why one of them was found out in this episode is because one of the people that was with them is a telepath, and she kind of felt something was off. And this particular mutant, her name is Chloe, ended up being able to move super fast. I did like the whole combo of like Clarice opening up a portal, John like going through it and falling above and knocking her out. That was pretty sick. But it's actually kind of sad because we get introduced to a drug. I think it's called Kick. Basically, it's a mutant drug. It kind of makes you feel invincible, but it's like basically enhances your abilities. it seems very addictive because it seems like Chloe's suffering from it. We kind of also end up finding out that that's what's this whole, like, it's also part of the reason why mutants are kind of being controlled and everything. It seems like it's Campbell's little special brew that's making them like that. And the fact is, Chloe ended up dying from this episode because she was kind of suffering like an addict, and it seems like it takes its toll, which kind of makes sense because it probably puts a big strain on a mutant's body, because it's like it pushes their powers beyond their probably normal limits, and that just probably has negative effects on the body. So eventually, like, extended use of it and being injected into someone's system will eventually kill them. So it's kind of sad because Chloe's situation is like her husband was killed, her child was like taken from, because the reason why Sentinel Service got involved was because she took her child, because her daughter got sick, she took her child to a doctor, but the doctor wouldn't treat a mutant, so she kind of went on a bit of a rampage. And this whole situation, it kind of coincides with Marcos and Lorna having their big fight. Obviously, like, because for Lorna, it's like, I'm sure for her, it's almost like she doesn't know Marcos anymore. It's like she sees this person who's super excited about destruction, getting a kiss from Carmen. As Carmen, it's like the man that you love, the father of your child. It feels like you're being backstabbed by them. Which Marcos is saying it's complicated, which I get it. There is some complication here because there is history, not only with Carmen, but it's also about who he was back then, because being with the mutant underground made him change his ways. He didn't enjoy what he did, but there was a part of him, because he grew up in that environment, that kind of shaped him in that way. Nature versus nurture whole situation. Because for him, the cartel was like the first real family he had outside, and then eventually the mutant underground was the next thing he had as to a family. But it's like, we're growing up in that environment, that being kind of the only family, it's like, it's understandable that you'd eventually grow and shape into that type of person. But it doesn't seem like Marcos wants to be like that, and he definitely doesn't want Lorna to be like that, because she was about to torture Chloe in the episode. She's like, stop doing him. And he's like, and Lorna's like, what? You can do it. You can kind of go all crazy with your powers, but you won't let me do it when it comes to protecting us. But for Marcos, it's like, once you go down that road, it's hard to come back, because as you saw his expression, like, there's that little bit of him that kind of got a thrill from him, but it's like, that doesn't completely disappear. It's like, once you go down that path, it's going to be harder to drag yourself back through, and he's not going to let Lorna go through that. But this whole situation of hearing that Chloe story, about being set, like, the whole situation with her child, I think it made them see things a little differently, because they were arguing the entire time this episode. But I think hearing that and experiencing that and seeing how her story ended kind of made them realize time is short, and we don't know if we'll always have each other, so we need to be there for each other when the time comes, when the time matters most, It kind of put things in perspective for them. So at the very least, there's some good side to that. Granted, Carmen's still a contributing factor in all of that. She, like I said, the sad thing is, because she knows what buttons to push when it comes to Marcos. Sadly, she knew Marcos longer than Lorna has, but Lorna and Marcos will have something she will never have. That's them having a family. So the fact is, Carmen doesn't know about that. Granted, we don't know how Carmen will react when she finds out about that, because at least this way, I think she feels like she's getting Marcos back more and more, but she ends up finding out Marcos is not falling for it, and he is 100% dedicated to Lorna, and they're having a baby. It might set her off to the point she betrays them. Because Carmen's just a wild card waiting to happen, because at any time she keeps threatening wanting to turn them in, and it's like, oh, maybe we should work together. Cartel, and like she said last episode, the cartel as well as the mutants are not that different. So, but probably like the biggest thing that we learned walking away from this episode, well, obviously we learned more about Reeve, because we ended up meeting his dad, Otto, in this episode, which obviously Caitlin's like, whoa, your dad's connected to all this because the whole Trask Industries thing. Well, it turns out that Reeve and his dad have not been in good terms. Apparently, they haven't talked for 20 years. The last time they talked was way before the kids were born. So it's like, well, why is that? Well, it's like him and his dad didn't always have the good relationship. Reeve was sick and his dad never visited him once. It's like, ouch, that kind of sucks. So that's why he's kept like the kids away from him this entire time. He goes to visit his dad, and it seems like first, like, his dad doesn't care. He's like, oh, you're with the mutant underground. Oh, you're asking about my work. My work never led to any of what's going on right now. But then Otto explains some things. I was wondering how this was all going to tie into, like, Andreas, like, and his sister, the sibling mutants that kind of cause all the mayhem. I was thinking that was supposed to be Otto, but it's like, no. In fact, it's actually Andreas was his dad, and obviously, like, that was his aunt. Basically, they were two mutants, and they basically, when they came together, they would cause mass destruction. They were essentially terrorists. And then it starts trickling down, because now it's like, I'm actually a mutant myself. It's like, wait, what? And Reed was too. But it validated what I brought up before. I was like, isn't being a mutant kind of like a genetic thing? Like, if you're a mutant, I feel like mutation kind of happens to everybody. So it's not even just I don't know if it's 100% a hereditary thing, but I think it's like if you awaken as a mutant, definitely your children are going to be one. It seems like. But I think there are cases where you just have a child and your child becomes a mutant, because there's plenty of people who were kicked out by their parents. So obviously, if the mutation starts early enough in a family, it will pass down from generation to generation. Obviously, it's a mutation, so it could happen at any point in time. As like the gene is dormant inside of people, so maybe there's plenty of, like, I think I've elaborated on this before, but maybe there's examples of like those particular families. Like take Marcos, for example. Maybe his dad or mom, one of them have a mutant gene, but it always stayed dormant and never went active. Or maybe it just only exists within Marcos. Which also begs the question, what is his and Lorna's child going to be like when it comes to powers? Typically, it seems like kids adopt their parents' powers, especially so. Which power will their kid have? Like Lorna's magnetism, or Marco's whole light situation. I don't know. But it seems that basically Otto was trying to get rid of the mutant gene. And I was like, how did that whole situation work? His kids are mutants, but he's not. I was wondering about that. It's like, no, it's because the mutant gene was removed, or at least suppressed, inside of Reeve. I keep calling him Reed. I think it's because the whole Reed Richards situation kind of messes with my head. But Reeve, that's why he got sick. But it was because it was something that had to be done before his powers activated for the mutant gene to be suppressed. Because Otto wanted to prevent a situation like his dad and his aunt situation of becoming terrorists. Because it's like he fears that's what's going to happen to Andy and Lauren, because it seems like that's why Campbell's so interested in, and why this all ties back, because he knows that they're direct descendants of them. So he knows that Andreas and his sister's family. So it's like what they were capable of is now in their hands, which does beg the question, whatever happened to Otto's dad, Andreas, as well as like Andreas' sister, like whatever happened to them. But everything Otto did, like he was a little cold towards his son. It seems like his mom, Reeve's mom, didn't really know any of this. Even the fact is that Otto himself was a mutant, but he wanted to stop that from ever potentially happening. It's not even just maybe that's one reason why they never actually had other children, was because Otto was scared of like bringing another child into this world who might potentially be a mutant and carry on that curse. Because it's like his family, like there's almost I guess psychopathic thing that comes along with siblings having powers in their family, so he doesn't want that to continue. But now it's like passed on to Andy and Lauren. So, and we've already seen what they're capable of, and like especially when they put their powers together. But even that, them working together, isn't the same thing as putting their powers together, because even Andreas and his sister were like, oh yeah, we actually like this building, and we saw like in those newspaper clippings the destruction that they're capable of, and it seems like Andy and Lauren can be capable of that too. We're definitely getting to that at some point, but. And that it does beg the question. I wonder, like, does that mean that in some shape or form Reeve could get his powers too, or is it because it was done to him, like the gene was so diluted that there's no possibility for it to come back, but because he had kids, it kind of got unsnapped or something, like undiluted or something. I'm curious about that. But the point I was about to make is like, it's sad that, Reeve and his dad spent so much time apart, and now they don't have a chance to make it up because his dad sacrificed himself. He's like, protect your kids, but also protect the world from them, and ended up charging up his attack and ended up, dying in the process. He ended up getting shot. He ended up sadly taking Pulse out with him. But as we saw with the Chloe situation, who knows if there's this whole situation of being drugged can be reversed or not. Maybe there was no hope for Pulse. Either way, so John and Reeve end up burying them, and Reeve ends up leaving a photo there for him. So I'm curious to see what that means going forward, especially now that Reeve knows this truth, and what that means when he has to explain that to Lauren and Andy. It's like, what was supposed to happen. I mean, does this mean, it does beg the question, like, will Reeve try and get that? Will he try? Well, no, I was about to say, like, try and use them on his kids, but it's like, no, he can't. Like, their powers are already activated. It had to be done before. So, but now this is kind of a bad thing too, because that means there's something out there that can wipe out the X gene, which is like, if they wanted to, they could eradicate potential future mutants, you know? Keep them normal, keep them not being mutants. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I'm curious to see them kind of like dive in going forward. Cause we do see that Lauren and Andy like do this experience. Like they had their moments. They fight. They doesn't seem like they necessarily always got along together. But I mean, granted, we haven't seen their full history. But now, like obviously, like there was that moment where those other mutants were like, "Yo, you're actually letting her out of the cage," and they're stepping up, and Lauren's like, "Please calm down." And they're like, "No." And then Andy stepped up, is like, "Yo, like don't step to my sister like that." And they start shaking the entire building. And they're like, "Okay, fine, just make sure she stays down there and everyone's safe." I'm like, dude, that's so cool. And even Lauren's like, thanks. He's like, yeah, you're my sister. The only one that gets to talk to you like that is me. And it's like, you can see that over this course of this series so far, their bond is already growing stronger and stronger, which is cool and awesome. But at the same time, very scary considering what we know about them now and why Campbell wants them so much. Because I thought it was just a sibling thing in general when it comes. I was like, oh, are mutants like that in general? But it's like, no, it's specifically Lauren and Andy because of who their family is. So it's a Strucker family thing. So, but then that still ultimately begs the question: what does Campbell want with them? Like besides their destructive power, I guess it's because if they could get the mutants on their side, it's like, you know. Because Trask Industries is kind of a defense government funded thing. You know, it's meant, you know, they work for the government in the sense of like, oh, you work on stuff for defense. It's like, well, nothing's more, you know, powerful, the most weaponizable thing they can find, mutants. So that's the whole point of getting them under your control. You never have to worry about something like free will, that little pesky thing getting in the way. So if they can get like the Strucker siblings and control them, it's like they will have a massive, powerful weapon on their hands. I'm sure it's also for Campbell, it's just like the wonders of like what they're capable of, because mutants are nothing more than experiments to him at the very least. I'm very curious to get an episode where we kind of understand where he got to where he is now, like how this whole thing happened. I don't know if we'll actually get that or not, because I mean, it doesn't even seem like we're necessarily going to get an episode really. I mean, I guess because we got all the background we needed about, you know, Reeve and his whole family situation. Well, at least, you know, when it comes to his dad, Otto. So interesting enough, I didn't bring it up, but I don't know the actor's name. He played Arlo. God, what is Timothy Oliphant's character's name? From Justified, is it Raylan? Yeah, he played Raylan's dad, Arlo, in Justified. He also played like the main head dude of Mount Weather in season 2 of the 100. So I think that's the most recent thing I've seen him. I feel like I might have seen him in something else, but I can't quite place it. I want to say it might have been in the 100 was the last thing I saw him in, but nevertheless. Oh yeah, and there was also like this little story element about Sonia and Clarice, because it's like, oh, like, you know, like Sonia's trying to apologize, but Clarice is like, yeah, you know what? We don't need to be friends or whatever. It's like, I'm here for revenge for what happened to my foster parents, my foster family. So like, I'm in this fight. That's all there needs to be between us. But Clarice meets a girl named Nora, and it seems like Nora's from that place too. And it seems like I didn't really get this last episode, but maybe like it didn't correlate in my head. Like I think she explained it before, but it didn't really set in my mind. But it's like the fact is, because she kept opening a road to that place, you know, it drew, you know, Sentinel Service's attention, and that's why they ended up finding that place. So for Clarice, she blames herself for what happened to those people who took in so many mutants, and Nora's kind of stuck with those bad memories. So her and Sonia, she kind of helps, you know, use Sonia's power for good and kind of get rid of those scary nightmares for her, because every time she closes her eyes, she sees that whole scenario playing out all over again. So kind of showing you also the good side that, you know, what Sonia does can also help as well. So, and obviously like Clarice's situation, but more so Jace's situation kind of shows you more so like, yeah, that's the bad side of things. So it motivates him to kind of be more not so willing to follow the law and everything, kind of treating mutants like the enemy and stuff like that. So it's also kind of interesting because you also had that conversation between Reeve and his dad, Otto, earlier in the episode being like, oh yeah, I'm not about to have this whole debate with you about mutants and everything. It's like, oh, you know, they're monsters, they're terrorists. It's like, oh wait, you'd rather me use the term freedom fighter, which is so interesting considering the fact is that he is one. But then again, I guess that's the whole aspect of him hiding what he is, trying to play that role, you know. So like I said, I'm very interested to know what happened to his parents. Maybe they mentioned it. There was a part of the episode I missed. Like I missed like what, 10 or 20 seconds maybe, because I had to step away from the TV for a little bit. So not unless something happened then or I just missed some dialogue, but I don't think they really dived into that too much. So maybe, it's something we'll kind of get to know about a little bit later on. Sadly, there won't be an episode next week, but there will be one the week after next. So remember that, no episode next week, but the week after next. Michael, if you want to cut this a little bit before when you were talking about Sonya and Clarice, So, I mean, at least there's some, good common ground there between Sonya and Clarice. Things aren't as weird and awkward. They're still weird and awkward. We still haven't seen whether Clarice is really 100% suffering from all that stuff inside of her head. Not suffering, but the whole John situation complicating things, I wonder, is that still a play? It hasn't come up yet. I wonder, because now that she's back, will she get Sonya to kind of remove it from her head now that they're on good terms? But like I brought up last episode, it's John definitely is developing feelings, but obviously there's a whole him and Sonya thing, so that's just going to get super complicated all on its own. So, but really that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.